It is November 7th, and because it's a Tuesday at 10 a.m., that means it's time to track the tropics. From sunny Central Florida, I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
All right, so Jeremy, right off the bat, I've had a lot of people surprisingly sending me emails asking, why are y'all still tracking the tropics? It's November. To which my response is, hurricane season runs through the end of November.
Right. I mean, it goes all the way through November. Last year at this time, I remember because it was right around Election Day here in Savannah. We had tropical storm warnings. You were dealing with a hurricane down there in Florida. So, yes, these storms can still definitely happen this time of year.
They do sometimes happen. Thankfully, that's not the case right now. But there are 23 days left until the end of hurricane season. So we've been hit. We've tracked. At the moment, though, thankfully, Jeremy, we are doing none of that. This is a look at the Atlantic Basin right now.
Yeah, and it's very quiet at the moment. It was a couple days ago. We had a little disturbance cruise into Central America, a rain producer for them. Otherwise, at the moment, nothing really standing out, but we do have obviously some numbers to go through for you. Take a look at ensembles and also the ever famous GFS fantasy tropical system that it always likes to show.
Isn't it fun? I mean, it doesn't matter what time of year. I feel like it'll be January and it'll be trying to throw hurricanes out. You know, the GFS loves to do GFS things, and this time of year is no exception.
I mean, it has been. I'll give it to it though. That model has been so consistent with wanting something to develop down in the Caribbean and lift to the north, and it continues to bring it through that run. So we're not just talking like 300 hours out. We're now down to about 200 hours out. So we'll see. Maybe if we get another few days closer, it'll finally drop it, or maybe it tries to get at least some sort of low going.
Yeah. So let's do this then, Jeremy. Let's take a look and see what the model's doing right now. This is the raw GFS, okay? And just to familiarize yourself, this is the 6E run. It's the most recent run, and we're looking at mean sea level pressure, normalized anomaly. So rolling right through, high pressure, nothing crazy, but notice what happens right there, down in the Caribbean Sea. That's the GFS trying to do the GFS things, Jeremy.
Yeah, and we're talking over a week out, so this is still a lot's time to kind of monitor this, track it. It does sort of pique our interest a little bit, though, because some of our other methods, we were thinking, hey, maybe mid-November there could be a stronger low somewhere near Bahamas, east of Florida, or into the Southwest Atlantic. Not saying it would be over land, but just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And for those that have watched my coffee talk this morning, we were talking a little bit about that, kind of discussing the long-range methodology. But, I mean, just by looking at that GFS, it's definitely not your normal idea for that's mid-November. That's the 16th, and just kind of rolling through. It takes a very normal November path from the Caribbean kind of over Cuba and then out to sea, but it is kind of interesting getting into Thanksgiving week, and the week before Thanksgiving we may, according to the GFS, be tracking something. And then there, what I think is nice is this is just before. So this is Tuesday morning, November the 21st. So a couple of days before Thanksgiving, the GFS is showing a decent little cold front moving right through the deep south, which would impact your areas and would be impacting my areas.
Yeah, I did a little analysis the other day. Each of us kind of do, when it comes to outside of this, our own things, our own updates. And last Friday, I did a little more analysis about the Thanksgiving week using one of our other longer range methods, the BSR. And using that, I really think that probably Thanksgiving or the day before, there will be a cold front that starts approaching the southeast. I think it's north of your area. So I would say at the very least, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, you're pretty mild/warm. And then on Thanksgiving Day, maybe even kind of warm in your area. There should be a front, though, that moves in. And if I had to pick the warmest part of Thanksgiving holiday, if you look at Thanksgiving through that following Sunday, I would say probably Thanksgiving. And then we start to cool down. So it should be cooler to start that weekend after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But again, we're kind of using our all kinds of methods here to give you our thoughts. And those are kind of the thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of funny because I was thinking the same thing, and we were chatting about the Thanksgiving forecast. There's definitely that front coming in that vicinity. The question is exact timing, and of course, the question is how it plays out, because Thanksgiving is, that first big holiday of the holiday season, we'll say. So a lot of people have been asking about it, and that's kind of one of the neat things about our long-range forecasting, Jeremy, is our ability to at least start eyeballing this. And I feel like we've both been looking at Thanksgiving for the last couple of days even. So we're beginning things. We're not to the point where we can get to Christmas yet or Hanukkah or any of that stuff, but we're working in that direction, we'll say.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that we are watching for right now is sort of the recycle using our sort of tried and true method that we use for long range forecasting, LRCs. So what we're looking for is maybe that low in the Gulf to recycle sometime the back half of November, and then that would signal to us, okay, with greater confidence, here's what the cycle duration may be. So I would say right now we're studying highs, lows, where they're strongest, weakest, and then as we move a little bit farther into November, it's okay. Is this the repeat of something
Right.
we've seen before?
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too, Jeremy, is just looking at kind of using the BSR, one of our longer range forecasting tools. It does look like the end of November may have an interesting little low on the northern side of the Gulf, which would be the recycle of that October 10th storm system that brought some severe weather to like the Tampa Bay area and up here in my northern areas in Flagler County as well. 2 EF2 tornadoes in October. So that was a severe weather episode of note. And it'll be interesting to see when that comes back around and how strong it is, because for right now, and we've discussed this a little bit, that's kind of the big game in terms of our areas of low pressure that we have been monitoring. There haven't been many storm systems yet this year.
Right, and I believe you just pulled up the map showing the lows.
Yep.
That we're plotting. And since we talked a week ago, we did add two. That one that is just northeast of the Bahamas. I think that one was October 31st.
Yep.
And then one due north of it was on November the 5th. So those weren't particularly strong features, but I mean, think about it. Tropical systems sometimes aren't these big, huge monster things. They can be pretty compact in their own little area and fairly small scale.
Yeah.
So we do plot these lows, and then we might start to see a pattern take hold. But really the one we're probably so far most interested in is that one that went from the Western Gulf up towards Florida Panhandle.
Yeah. So, and that was the October 10th, the October 11th, the October 12th and 13th, those areas there. So once we start to see that recycling, we'll have an idea of pattern duration. We'll have an idea and be able to start keying in on, our hurricane forecast for next year. But, right off the bat, just in looking at this, there have not been a whole lot of impactful lows. Interestingly enough, that's a bit of a change over the last few years' cycles.
Right, and we still have maybe 2-3 weeks of sort of new that we haven't seen yet. But yeah, so far I would say, at least for land, and again, obviously that one in the Gulf, that one probably raises a bit of a red flag for us in terms of what could be potentially a hot spot.
Right.
The others so far have, for the most part, stayed away. So what we're looking for is lows that kind of would move into land versus ones that are out in the Atlantic or moving away.
Right. All right. So interesting stuff. So let's do this, Jeremy. Let's look at some of our long-term forecast model data. This is another technique that we use. This is the BSR, the Bering Sea Rule. Do you want to, before I get into it, do you just want to kind of explain what it is before we go too much further?
Yeah. When I did my explanation the other day, obviously someone said, wow, this is kind of complex. And without question, it is. We try to simplify it the most we can. So what we're doing here is just we're looking in the North Pacific. We've identified an area up there that sort of is tied to the southeastern part of the U.S. when you project forward, because westerly flow, you start to see these systems move from the Pacific towards the U.S. and then eventually out into the Atlantic. So we're watching an area in the North Pacific, and then we sort of fast forward about, I would say, about 15 to 18, 19 days.
Yeah, it's complex. but isn't so much of weather complex. But we're just doing the best we can to kind of try and simplify this down. So that's kind of an idea of what we're looking at. So right off the bat, this is kind of the first shot, and this is going to be, if that was October the 25th or so. So we would say that would be around Friday, Saturday of this week, something like that. Jeremy, you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
so. Okay, did you have something?
So the map you're showing there was valid when?
That's valid October 25th at 12Z.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, let's look at that. So that would have maybe some sort of low off from our coast. And now let's take a look at the European model.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. Yes. Give me two. You talk while I get that dialed up.
Okay. So let's focus in on those lows that this is showing. And again, we hypothetically draw in the U.S. just to give you an idea of kind of the area we're talking about. So all those lows are off the southeast coast or east of Florida. And there is one model that is definitely showing low pressure developing. So does the European model have a little better idea what may be coming this weekend?
Yeah. I mean, if you look, that's Sunday, the 18th. Watch off the coast of the Carolinas there, right? And there fires up this little area of low pressure. The GFS does not have that at all. But the European definitely has this kind of a storm system bubbling up. And that would line up with this BSR depiction, which is this weekend. So, it's not an exact science, but if it gives us a breadcrumb, if it gives us a clue, then it's definitely something interesting to monitor, right?
Absolutely. So what you're showing there, again, was from October in North Pacific. We're translating that forward. You said that was the 25th?
Yeah, so that would, if you directly relate that, that's 1, 2, 1, 2, that's Saturday/Sunday, which lines up.
So you're looking at about 16, 17 days forward from that, something like that, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, that's that time window, about 15, 19 days, somewhere in there is typically, I think I always average it out, just take about 17 or so.
Yeah.
But we'll see if a low develops, that is hinting at maybe some lower pressures off from our coastline. Right now, it appears if a low does form, it would continue its trek off to the east. Yeah.
So it's, hey, if nothing else, it's just an interesting technique to look at. But let's continue on, all right? So as that's doing its thing off of the east coast, the interesting thing, too, is that the BSR in just thereafter, so this would be the 27th of October, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So around early to mid next week, it's got some sort of a storm system attached to a cold front riding across the northern Gulf. Nothing of note, but that does verify in terms of a cold front and in terms of timing there, Jeremy. So, there's the BSR indicating kind of our mid next week, early to mid next week cold front.
Yeah. Right there it is along the northern Gulf Coast. We'll see if low pressure ends up forming. Maybe it's something would plop down on that map that we're tracking. Can you fast forward and show, or actually, I think it's today's map is the one that lines up with Thanksgiving time frame.
Yeah. So we're just kind of rolling through. So low pressure off the East Coast, So today's November 7th. So let's just keep going. There's a front that's November 2nd, which would tie into around the 18th, 19th of November. So the weekend before November, nice little cold front moving through.
So and then we just keep. So on the North Pacific site that we look at, today's actual surface map that it shows is the one that ties to what I think would be Thanksgiving. So because today's the 7th, and then you project forward maybe 16, 17 days, and it has that front right over the southeastern U.S. If you can't bring that up,
it's there. It's there right now.
Oh, so that is it right now?
Yeah, that's it right now. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean that's showing you, and that's valid on the 7th.
That's valid 6Z on the 7th, so early, but yes.
Okay, so probably the 23rd, 24th is when we would expect some sort of change to start to move in. So I still think there's a good chance that Thanksgiving could be, even in my area, fairly mild/warm. And then the front comes in, and then maybe Friday, Saturday, or something like that starts to cool down. So I would say the odds favor Florida probably to have average or above average temperatures for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and that's what I've kind of been talking about on our morning coffee talks. Is it looks like we're going to be between fronts, but that's hopeful that just after Thanksgiving we'll have a nice cool front. When everybody's putting out Christmas decorations or what have you, getting all set up for it. Now, what we also can do is we can take this and push it out further just to eyeball it. So this is that same BSR Bering Sea rule kind of idea methodology, and we just kind of take it out. There's another storm system, so that's valid. That's November 8th, so that would be, there's that cold front leaving the deep south, moving out, high pressure building in, and then watching, interestingly enough, right in here, if that's November 11th, that would be about the 27th, 28th, 29th. It's showing, Jeremy, this little Gulf low riding up and then kind of along the northern Gulf Coast there, perhaps, toward the end of November, right in here. Could that be the recycle of that October low pressure system? It'll be interesting to see.
I think it could. I mean, obviously, we're just sort of picking out things and features that we want to watch moving forward, but that would be maybe a cycle duration of 50 days, which is definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
We always say most of the durations are about 40 to 60 days, and then we are able to fine tune that to maybe a span of 3-4 days or something like that.
Yeah. All right. So there's another cold front. That's November the 22nd, which would be 1, 2, around December 9th. So we're not to the point where we're to Christmas yet. But if there's one good thing that I'm seeing, it's a lot of cold fronts, So we're in an El Nino, we're still in an El Nino pattern. So cold fronts, El Nino, that does kind of line up nicely. And hey, I know we wouldn't mind tracking plenty of cold fronts. I don't know about you guys up there in the Low Country and Georgia. I don't know.
Yeah, it got a little cool here last week. We had some nighttime lows in the 30s, which definitely is kind of chilly. So this week we're consistently in the 80s for highs, above average. We might get close to a record on Friday, but overall just above average for our area. I don't think there's too many complaints about low humidity and a high around 80.
Yeah, no. Although we're getting to 87 by Friday, so near records as well. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the season, my friend.
All right. We have not had a change. 20 storms, average is 14. And we don't have any areas of interest right now. Again, maybe something in a week or so down in the Caribbean, but time will tell. And I don't think if we see that low form on the European, probably not tropical in nature.
Yeah. The water temperatures are just too cool, I think, up that way.
Our water temp now is 65.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so in terms of named storm days, we've had 99 days this hurricane season with a named storm. The average 30 years is about 65.6, and last year we had 52. So definitely an above-average season by all the metrics. The ACE score, Jeremy, this is kind of the master number, and we are well above an entire hurricane season at 145.6.
Yeah, maybe we add a little bit to that, but we'll probably end up somewhere there to 150 or so.
Yeah. A lot of people are talking about just how interesting it is that we use like the Bering Sea as kind of a teleconnection to down here. Lawrence even says, I find it's interesting. You look at patterns coming from the northwest to project hurricanes that generally develop. But it's not just, first off, Lawrence, it's not just Africa stuff. It's just overall patterns. And Jeremy, when you were teaching me this, master, you had said that the Bering Sea rule really works best kind of fall, winter, spring time frame. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think fall and winter, sometimes in or fall and spring. When you get into, I would say, summer, the flow upper levels is just for us, it's kind of dead.
Yeah,
extremely weak. That's why you don't see a lot of cold fronts making it down here in the summer. You don't see a lot of tornadic activity. I mean, maybe you see a water spout or something like that, or something tied to a tropical system, but not big severe weather outbreaks. And even in the deep south, down on sort of that Dixie tornado alley, that's not going in the summer. That is more spring. So when it comes to the BSR, I really like to look at it at fall, kind of in spring. Summer, it is extremely difficult to use. And even sometimes in the winter, you can look at it, but I mean, the jet stream is just absolutely cranking up there. So sometimes you just get these bomb lows that are very common in the Bering Sea in the winter, and that doesn't necessarily translate down to our weather. So you kind of have to use this several times to kind of know what features to pick out. Right now is a good time, and then spring is a good time. Once we get into the heart of winter or heart of summer, it gets to be a little more difficult. But by then, we pretty much can then move on to our other methods.
Right. Right. Debbie Mandarino is asking a good question. How long does an El Nino last? I mean, we could, we've seen 2, 3, 4 year El Ninos, but this one may end up being a fairly short-lived El Nino cycle.
Yeah, it's pretty strong right now. And last night I started to chart. I wrote down 6 or 7 different years that I was like, okay, these are the ones we're probably just going to look at for next hurricane season.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't mean we're using that data, because this year, if the sort of analogs that we picked out, I think the average was 12 named storms, and clearly we went above that.
And just in looking, by the way, my chief meteorologist yesterday was going over the preseason forecast for Colorado State, NOAA, and us, and how it compared to kind of the actualities. And it's just crazy to think that March the 1st, we were like, yeah, it's going to be above average, when building El Nino, the idea is like, there's no way that's going to happen. And we went so against the grain on that. We had a good laugh at how we weren't all that far off. We did pretty okay, my friend, if we may take a momentary celebration in terms of the numbers.
And also, I think on top of that, look at the hot spots we highlighted. And then, so the red hot spots, boom, both of those landfalls we hit. And then we had our other area of interest with maybe a little bit above average. And we just had a tiny piece of Texas picked out. And that's where, was it Harold? Was that the name of the storm?
That's where something went.
Yes. It went kind of down in that Corpus Christi, Brownsville, between there, that area. So I think overall our forecast was pretty good. Wasn't perfect.
There's nothing perfect, and we can always shoot for perfect, knowing that that's just not the way that it's going to go. William's asking, any hurricanes coming to Florida anytime soon? No. Thankfully, that's not the case right now. So,
and also with the hurricane season forecast, so if you look at all the different pieces to it, the hot spots were spot on. We picked out the number of hurricanes, major hurricanes, and we went above everyone else's forecast. Ends up maybe we were a storm or two short, but I think overall the forecast gave people a very good idea of what was coming for the season ahead.
I think that that's definitely our last tracking the tropics of the season needs to be looking at our forecast, looking at the verification, looking at the Colorado State, looking at NOAA, and at least just kind of like, hey, let's hold us accountable. How did we do? What can we try and work on to do better, and share where we are in the development of our 2024 hurricane season forecast.
Yeah, and that'll be coming up, what is it, the last Tuesday in November. So let's see here. Let's get the calendar out. I could do the math, but it's easier. The 28th.
Yes, it's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
Yep. So the 28th, everyone will be back from their holiday, and we can sort of put a bow tie on the Atlantic hurricane season. Hopefully there's nothing out there.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good opportunity for us to just once again say, there's nothing out there right now. So I have nothing else to say.
Nope, I need to go vote is what I need to do.
Do it, yes. I need to do that. I need to get over to the station, all that fun stuff. So it's a couple of minutes early, but I'm okay with that. From sunny and quiet Central Florida, thanks for hanging out and tracking the tropics with us. I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And from Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson. We will definitely see you next Tuesday.
William says that you and I look like father and son. I will take that, old man. Hey, Jeremy, I'll talk to you later, buddy.
All right, take care.